Friday. Gosh, guys, my day is already. We starting off wrong. It's Friday, September the 18th, and you are tuned in to Game Over with Vashti and Sharona. I am Vashti Hurt. And alongside me, I have my co-host, Sharona, and it's been a while. There's so many things we kind of have to catch up on, right, Sharona?
We do need to catch up. It has been a long time. It's been too long. I've missed my sister in crime, Vashti, talking about sports and all kinds of other stuff. But, life gets in the way sometimes.
Life gets in the way, but you got to make time. And so I want to thank Sharona for kind of like encouraging us to just go ahead and do it and make the time. So thank you, Sharona, for that. We have a good show. We're going to have Game On and Game Over. We're going to talk about some topics that have kind of been discussed, but we haven't discussed them together. So we're going to catch up on that stuff. And then in our second segment, we're going to talk some fantasy football with Allie Fontana. Sharona, I am not on a fantasy team this year, and it's like I'm going through withdrawal.
No way. Well,
I know. Can you believe it?
I must have known that because I think I did a few for you. I have 12. I'm crazy. I have 12 fantasy teams this year.
How do you have the time to have 12 teams?
It's insane. I don't know. It just fortunately, I've got six or seven best ball leagues, so that makes it a little bit easier. Those you don't have to set a lineup. It's best ball, whatever player scores the most, and so it does it like that. And that does help.
Wow. Sharona needs a fantasy football intervention, guys.
I do.
12? Goodness. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with Game On or Game Over because we want to get to as many topics as possible. We're going to start off with Richard Sherman and Michael Bennett, Seattle Seahawks teammates. After being incorrectly linked to a comment on a website referencing killing cops and the Black Lives Matter movement, Richard Sherman addressed the accusation, and then he also referenced the Black Lives Matter movement during media access. I believe it was on Wednesday, and I'm going to give a quote. This is not everything that Richard Sherman said because we know that he can be a little loquacious, but I'm going to try to read as much as possible because I don't want some things to get lost in translation. So this is what Richard Sherman told the media. Before we get started, I'm going to address because there was some article written, you guys have seen it, talking about King Noble and all this. I did not write this article. A lot of people sent it to me over the weekend, but I thought this would be the best place to address it. There were some points in that article or in the post that were relevant and I could agree with, but there were also some obviously ignorant points in there. I don't think any time's a time to call for an all-out war against police or any race of people. I thought that was an ignorant statement. But as a black man, I do understand that Black Lives Matter. I stand for that. I believe in that wholeheartedly. But I also think that there's a way to go about things and there's a way to do things. And I think the issue at hand needs to be addressed internally. And before we move on, because from personal experience, we have you have living in the hood, living in the inner city, you deal with things. You deal with people dying. Dealt with a best friend getting killed. It was two 35-year-old black men. Wasn't no police officer involved. Wasn't anybody else involved. And I didn't hear anybody shouting Black Lives Matter then. And I think that's the point we need to get to, is that we need to deal with our own internal issues before we move forward and start pointing fingers, attacking other people. All right. So this was Richard Sherman's view, and then Michael Bennett, I believe it was the next day during a presser, he had his own rebuttal to what Sherman said, and this is what Michael Bennett said. Oh, yes, I was reading Richard Sherman's quotes yesterday. I would like to say that I disagree with some of the things that he said. I think when people talk about the Black Lives Matter thing, I think he's misinterpreting it, that black people kill black people, white people kill white people kill people every day. I think the Black Lives thing is more about the social injustice, not so much the injustice of people killing within the community. It's about the social injustice of the people that are supposed to protect them and building the community through the black community. Not just black people, too, because you see a lot of people within Black Lives Matter organization who are white, Spanish, they're all dealing with the same type of hardships that are going on around the world. All right. Game on or game over that Sherman's comments hurt the Black Lives Matter movement?
I say game over. I don't think that it hurts the Black Lives Matter movement. I don't necessarily agree with everything that Richard Sherman said, but I absolutely support his right to say it. And I think that the more dialogue we have about things, the better off we are. Now, hopefully you want intelligent dialogue, and there's no question whatsoever but that Richard Sherman is a smart guy. He's an intelligent guy, and he's expressing his opinion on something that it's really, listen, the Black Lives Matter movement is shaping the current political climate. You see, it's having a huge impact on the upcoming presidential election. It's shaping all manner of things. And, I agree with Michael Bennett. I thought Michael Bennett is an interesting guy. He and Martellus Bennett, neither one afraid, brothers playing in the league, one on defense and one obviously on offense at the tight end position. But neither one of those guys are afraid to speak their minds either. And you appreciate that. And Michael Bennett had a very reasoned response to it, which I agreed with. And, when we have these discussions, I think that it raises awareness, and awareness is always a good thing.
Let me start off by saying I commend these athletes who have a voice, who have some type of influence, for having conversations beyond sports, for having input into things that are going on socially that impact, people and them, their families and their friends beyond the football field. Because I think that that's something in the past that was lacking. You saw a lot of athletes getting involved in social activism in the 60s and 70s, and that kind of tapered off in the 90s, and, that's one of the biggest criticisms that Michael Jordan got, was that he was not, with the huge voice that he had, he never got involved in any, publicly, got involved in any social justice things or social justice causes. So I want to commend these guys, and it seems like, through social media and even the media itself, these voices are being heard. So let me start by that, by saying that I don't necessarily agree with what Richard Sherman said as a whole, and Sharona and I agree on this. We aren't talking about, of course, black-on-black crime is something that's terrible, but Michael Bennett said it there. There's crime within a race all the time. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about social injustice that has been occurring throughout the inception of this country to people of color. And so I think that it kind of, when Sherman, this guy who's been so outspoken and who is seen as, I think most of these athletes are intelligent, but Sherman is seen as one of the intelligent ones. When he takes a more conservative approach to this movement that is so integral to this country, in my opinion right now, I think it could have the potential to hurt it a little bit. But I am thankful for Michael Bennett coming out and saying, look, this is what he said, but this is what this movement is about. And I think he summed it up perfectly. And so I'm just glad that this conversation is going on in sports, and these guys aren't just looked at as meatheads who should just go on the field and knock each other around.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's pretty clear from what he said that Richard Sherman personal story there, and he didn't share it. He's not obligated to share it. I do wonder what that story is. He comes from. It seemed clear to me, at least, that his comments were coming from a place close to him, if that makes any sense. And so he was approaching this from the perspective of a guy who lost somebody, due to, and listen, and I don't remember who said this. If I did, I would give them credit, but they were absolutely right. Crime is it's a matter of proximity. Crime happens because of proximity, and you see that. We talk a lot about violence against women here. That's proximity. It is the nature of the beast in some respects, and so I thought Michael Bennett did a good job of differentiating between the personal, that's where Richard Sherman was coming from, and the public, and that's where Black Lives Matter really comes into play.
I think that's a great way to summarize that, Sharona. All right, there are a few plays that drew the scrutiny of fans around the league this past Sunday. They were labeled dirty, and we'll discuss whether we think they were dirty or not. Ndamukong Suh appeared to kick off the helmet of Alfred Morris during their matchup with the Redskins, and Pac-Man Jones slammed Amari Cooper's head into the ground. Game on or game over that these actions warrant suspensions, or they should have warranted suspensions.
I think that they should have been suspended. I definitely think that both of these guys should have been suspended. And Ndamukong Suh wasn't even fined. That Pac-Man Jones was fined $35,000. He is appealing that, has appealed that. Excuse me, I believe. And it came out today. Excuse me. Sorry, guys. My allergies are acting up this morning. It was reported today that he had said that he didn't intend to change anything at all about his game, which, that doesn't surprise me. And everybody knows what Pac-Man's game is. But I definitely think that both of these guys should have been suspended because they have a history. These are not isolated incidents. They have a history of doing these things, and both of these acts were intentional. And Ndamukong Suh is not going to okey doke me. I know what his game is. I know what he's doing. That was intentional, and to me, it is just more. And we're going to be talking about Tom Brady here in a minute. It's just more evidence of how completely ridiculous the NFL has gotten in terms of its disciplinary procedures.
Yeah, I would say that they warranted. I think at this point the league needs to send messages and messages about intolerance of certain things. And we, like Sharona said, we are going to talk about Tom Brady, and it kind of all ties into it, how the league disciplines or doesn't discipline certain situations. There's just really a lot of gray area and confusion regarding that. Sue, I don't know whether it was done on purpose or not, and I watched that video, but given his history and given his reputation among his peers as a dirty player, you can't let that go even without a fine. I mean, you have to send some type of message that it's not accepted. I thought that Cooper slamming, I think that, this might be a vet trying to send a message to a young, highly touted rookie. And, I understand it, but it still isn't right. And I think I'm going to agree. I went back and forth on whether they should have been suspended, but it's just that type of stuff shouldn't be. That there's no place in the league for that extraness. Talking smack, all of that stuff is fine. I even think they should have the end zone celebrations, but doing extra things after plays, that's not right.
Yeah,
Were you going to say,
think
Sharona?
That I actually, because I'm very tired this morning, have definitely lost that train of thought. I thought that I know what I was going to say. Listen, the rookie was working Pac-Man Jones. There's no question whatsoever. Pac-Man Jones, still a very good player, even though he's on the downside of his career. The rookie was working him. I am reasonably certain that Pac-Man was doing what most vets do when their physical skills are slipping and they have to try to gain an advantage, and that is talking smack. And there were some reports that Amari Cooper might have gotten in the first shot, and then Batman Jones retaliated. You're a veteran guy. You're a guy that the league has paraded before rookies at this rookie symposium, which, by the way, is looking more like a clown show every day. Hi, Chris Carter, we see you. So, the league, I mean, what are you doing? It's just completely ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. Shady Sharona strikes again. I love the way you said that what most vets do when they're what did you say when they're getting I don't know. It was good regardless.
I said Amari Cooper was working him.
Yeah, you said he was working him, but you said when athletes are on the downside of their career, they resort to talking trash and try to get into people's minds mentally.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, you got to, but physically, no, I don't think that's right. Okay, here we go. Tom Brady. I haven't really spoken much about this on social media. Sharona just was going in at one point, preaching to the choir, who was me.
It's just ridiculous.
Tom Brady won his appeal and played last week against Pittsburgh in their season opener. Game on or game over. That Roger Goodell is a bigger loser than Tom Brady is a bigger winner in Deflategate.
Game over. Roger Goodell is winning at just as much as Tom Brady is winning. All he does is win, no matter what, right? Ratings are up. The league is making money hand over fist. And I've said this before. I'm going to say it again until, I'm blue in the face. Roger Goodell is doing the bidding of his owners. Point blank, period. You don't think he's out here consulting the owners and doing what they want him to do? Of course he is. I think the league wanted to lose. I think the league handled the Tom Brady case in a fashion that it could lose and still look like it was trying to win. Onto their game. Roger Goodell and Bob Kraft are buddies. I think they're still buddies. I think that a lot of this was for show, and I'm fairly pissed that the National Football League is fucking up my labor law by playing these games.
Well, listen, I agree with Sharona. I think that they're both winners. People don't understand this. Roger Goodell is not an NFL commissioner, okay? Commissioner is his title. He is a CEO. And what is the job of the CEOs? To make their shareholders money. Shareholders are the NFL owners. As long as the NFL continue to skyrocket, Roger Goodell and his whole, judge and jury, the way he runs the league, that's not going anywhere. Now, as soon as profits start going down, then they might reevaluate things. So fans, it's so hard for us to say, oh, we need to boycott the league. That's not going to happen because we love the sport so much.
It's not going to happen.
And they bank on that. They bank on the fact that fans aren't going to stop watching. They bank on the fact that all of this controversy actually makes the league more popular. Like oftentimes in the off season, NFL stories were above NBA playoff stories or baseball stories, or during the off season they were still ruling the media airwaves and media topics. So everybody's winning in the league. Tom Brady's winning. Roger Goodell is winning. The whole judge, how the judge was partying with Kraft in the Hamptons, like the weekend after the ruling. Come on, y'all. Seriously.
Ask yourself how the National Football League got its case filed. They chose that venue. How did it get filed before a judge with ties to Bob Kraft and the New England Patriots? Y'all can get okey-doked all you want. I know the game. I know what happened. I know how it went down. So you miss me with all that.
It's crazy to me. My only issue is I don't understand why the owners who actually have the owners of other teams who could have been put at could have been put at a disadvantage based on the actions of the Patriots. Why aren't they speaking up more? They have just as much. They have just as much stake in this whole NFL thing as Kraft does. I don't understand that, how they can allow Roger Goodell and Kraft to just bully them and to allow this culture of cheating to continue unpunished.
I promise you, they're pissed. They have to know what happened. And there were 19 teams, according to the ESPN report that came out after this went down. There were 19 teams that had filed complaints with the league, that had gone to the league and said, look, we're tired of this. The cheating is it's out of control. You know, there were the sound issues, just all kinds of crap. And the report also, put into pretty good perspective why the league, because there were owners that were like, you've got to do something about this. Listen, Roger Goodell answers to all 32. And so I really think that there is a behind, we haven't seen, I think Arthur Blank came out, the Atlanta Falcons owner said something. It's pretty interesting that it's been fairly silent on behalf of the owners. I promise you there are things going on behind the scenes that we do not know about, that we may not ever know about. I mean, who knows? But these owners are not happy. If it were not for the fact that the league is making so much money right now, it would be a much bigger issue. I'm going to be interested to see how it all. It's far from over in terms of what teams want to see happen in terms of Deflategate and Spygate and the continued pattern of cheating exhibited by the New England Patriots.
A message has to be sent. And I know Kraft has this influence. Certain owners have more influence in the league, just like with any corporate structure. Kraft has more influence. I think Arthur Blank is one of the more respected owners. Jerry Jones, of course. I mean, his team is the one that's the most. It's bringing in the most money out of all the other teams. I think even Jerry Richardson here in Charlotte, he's a pretty well-respected owner. What are these owners saying? Like, why are they behind the scenes? Are they worried about hurting the league? Because Kraft isn't worried about hurting the league. Roger Goodell isn't worried about hurting the league. So right now they're looking like a bunch of punks to me.
Well, I mean, look, you see ballers on TV, and it just mirrors what we're seeing in the league right now. It's a pretty bad look, I think.
It's a bad look, but nothing's going to happen because we, the consumers, continue to consume, and we're not going anywhere. And it's only making for good TV. The NFL is one big soap opera, and we love soap operas and drama.
Certainly we do.
Of course. Florida coach Jim McElwain's rant against running back Calvin Taylor received much criticism after it went viral, and although McElwain admitted he regretted the rant, he did not apologize for it. Game on or game over that McElwain was wrong for his verbal tirade.
Listen, all he regrets is getting caught. He didn't regret that rant. He didn't regret one single minute of it. I don't think that he was necessarily what Kelvin Taylor did was wrong. He shouldn't have done it. I think everybody can. Was it a huge deal in the larger scheme of things? Maybe not. I thought that it was a little over the top. That's what these coaches are. I mean, if you've ever played sports, that's what these coaches are. And I do think that we have to be careful and cognizant that there is a line. I don't even know that it's a fine line, but there is a line between coaching and being abusive. And we don't need to cross that, and there's certainly some evidence that guys do that. I mean, Butch Jones, who coaches the Tennessee Volunteers, took it upon himself to admonish a player on an opposing team over the weekend, and Butch was wrong for that. That was not his place to do that. So, I think these are teaching moments, and that hopefully it will help raise awareness as to how you do handle these things. I think that Coach McElwain was right to tell his player to cut it out. Went about it maybe in the wrong way, but these things happen.
I think this was all much to do about nothing. I personally didn't. I saw a coach, a passionate coach, during a close game, get into a player for doing something that was stupid, and he was trying to send a message to this guy like, you are costing your team, or you could have potentially cost the team this game. And so, I mean, I think that good coaches know when to turn it up, like McElwain, or know when to turn it down and maybe give, more encouraging talk. But he's getting flack. But to me, one of the GOATs, Coach K. Coach K, have you seen Coach K on the sideline? I've sat right behind one of Coach K's benches, and he uses every curse word in the book. He might not be as
animated.
Not be as animated as that other guy. He knows, to talk sternly without moving all around and stuff. But I think that what he says is just as powerful. But nobody's out here calling out Coach K. I mean, and he's one of the greatest. So at what point are we too soft on these guys? Like, I mean, he told the guy, I think he was like, be a man. That was unnecessary. And it was unnecessary. And, I just, some people were saying, I don't think that was abusive at all. Now, hitting your players and being physical with them, to me, that's probably crossing the line. But verbally chastising a player for doing something wrong, or in practice, if your player is doing something stupid, if you dig into their butts, is that something wrong? No. Like, some kids respond really well to that type of discipline. And good coaches know who responds well to that, who doesn't respond well to that, and when not to use that type of encouragement or chastise their players in that manner. So at what point, I just think we create, sometimes people, I think they want these guys to be soft, and we're babying kids a little bit too much, even with the bullying things sometimes. I just think we baby grown men essentially more than we should.
Yeah.
All right. We are going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to do some fantasy football talk with Ali Fontana, so stay tuned in. You're seeing Game Over with Vashti and Sharona.
All right, good morning and welcome back. You're tuned in listening to Game Over with Vashti and Sharona. I am Sharona. We're going to be joined here in a minute by Ali Fontana. We're going to talk some fantasy football. Ali is out on the best coast, the West Coast, and I'm sure she'll be calling in just any time now. So that's what have you been up to? We haven't had a chance to really chat. I know that you've been very busy. What's been going on with you?
Just working hard on Carolina Blitz. If you guys don't know, it's like my baby. It's my labor of love. That's my business. It's my way to try to get more women and more diversity in the sports writing. So I've been trying to work hard on my site. I actually have two writers who cover Triangle area sports. So we've gotten credentialed through UNC and NC State and Duke. So I have players that are covering their football games, and I'm trying to keep the content on the site interesting and updated and fresh. And so that's been a lot of work. I'm also doing Monday. I'm trying to bring like a Monday night football watch spot here to Charlotte. So that's something else that I'm working on is securing a venue, and it's going to be Carolina Blitz brings you Monday Night Football in the Queen City. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to make an official announcement coming up soon. I just need to solidify things with the venue and the management there. So that's basically it. Just trying to grind, trying to do what I can, and trying to be successful at doing what I love. What about you? Your radio shows are off the hook, Sharona. Like, you found your call. This is your calling.
I know, I love it. It's a lot of fun. I did miss doing this show with Vashti, and I knew that she was busy. I didn't want to be out here. I was like, I'm going to text Vashti and just see if I know she's really busy, and but yeah, it's a lot of fun. Back Talk with Sharona is going extremely well. It sort of cuts into the time that I get to write, which I don't like, because I do enjoy writing, but I enjoy that show, and it's a lot of fun. I need to get you on there and let you talk about Carolina Blitz. I'm so proud of you for all of that and how well it's doing, and for everything that you do. It's just such a pleasure to know you and to be able to do this show with you. But I think we're joined now by Allie, another woman who's rocking it out in the business. Allie, is that you?
It is. How are you guys this morning?
We're great. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. A little worn out after the game last night.
I know.
Watching, recapping, trying to make sense of it, but otherwise doing well.
It was really a crazy game, a close game. I think that, we'll get into that. We're going to talk about that. But before we get into all of that, let's talk a little bit about you. Tell everybody out there who you are and where you write, and we'll let you do this again, by the way, at the end, and where they can find you on social media.
Okay, well, this is actually starting my seventh season as a fantasy analyst. I've worked for the Fantasy Fix, Bruno Boys Fantasy Football. I've written for USA Today. I'm losing track of all the things that I've done. Football Diehards, published in a lot of different fantasy magazines. And I've also co-hosted a number of fantasy podcasts over the last 6 or 7 years as well. This year I'm doing a lot of guesting, which I'm happy to do. I have some regular segments on a couple of different radio programs. And, of course, this is always a sweet spot for me, coming and talking with you and Vashti. So thanks so much for having me on. And you can follow me on Twitter at Allie Fontana.
Well, thanks for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you, Allie. And by the way, big shout-out to Allie yesterday for giving me some fantasy football advice. Trading is not my forte, and so Allie's advice was invaluable to me, trying to get this one trade done that I was working hard on. We'll see how that turns out. We were talking about Thursday Night Football in the beginning of this segment. Allie, what do you think we can take away from it? The rumors of Peyton's demise, they were highly overrated, but he's not the same quarterback that he was even 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you have to keep in mind is that he isn't, the Kubiak offense, requires a certain type of O-line. They want him doing a lot of play action and all these type of things. So he isn't really, we saw this last week, Baltimore really brought on the blitzing like crazy. And when your O-line isn't that good and you're not that mobile, he was running out of time. He couldn't plant his feet. He couldn't set up his throws. So while, a lot of the discussion goes about arm strength, it's really more than the strength of his arm. It's really just his mobility. I mean, it was painful to kind of watch that he doesn't really get a chance to kind of run the plays. Now, what I noticed last night was that there was a very significant momentum shift, an energy shift late in the second quarter, and the offense started clicking. And then in the second half, it didn't look anything like the offense we saw in, for most of the first half. So it's. I wonder if they, went back to letting Peyton do his thing.
It did look that way.
It did. And I'm sure that's going to be something they'll have to decide, though, because the O-line that they have in place isn't meant to kind of run the old Peyton shotgun-style offense, which I think when he runs that shotgun O, he looks a lot better and more comfortable. But the scheme doesn't really work like that. And, the idea was to protect him a little bit and allow the run game to do a lot of the work and the defense. And that's, the running game isn't working very well, but the defense is there.
Yeah, the running game isn't working very well, though, because C.J. Anderson is dinged up. He's not healthy. Ronnie Hillman looks good in spurts. But I don't know. Is Ronnie Hillman a guy who can fill that C.J. Anderson void if he's going to be limited in the next few games?
Well, we saw that happen last year. I saw somebody on Twitter said, the ghost of Monty Ball, when you look at what happened last year after Ball got injured. Hillman was ready first, so they used him, but he's not really built, and his game isn't being, the 20 to 25 carry back over the course of a season. So I think, and he broke down, his body broke down, and, he ended up being replaced and usurped by CJ. So I think that there is talk that the toe injury might be turf toe. Now, some people can play through that, but it, hinders them. And we did see that.
Painful.
I think a lot of it's, yes, exactly. So it becomes a pain management issue. We've also seen people sidelined for an extended period of time. So what I'm saying is that I think that if those players play, unless you're doing, because honestly, when you look at it, CJ had 12 carries for, I think, 37 yards and a long of 14. And then Ronnie Hillman was 9 for 34. So they really there wasn't a great, disparity there. It's not like Ronnie outplayed CJ significantly last night. But I think it's something you monitor. I think that if you're in the market to kind of pick up a player on the cheap, C.J. Anderson owners, there will be some panic out there. He's kind of a good buy low candidate if you're on the acquisition side of things. I do think it's a little early to be getting rid of C.J. Anderson if he's on your roster. Hopefully you have a guy, somebody behind him and then a strong flex that you can kind of use if you need to do that. But certainly if you don't have confidence, then you kind of have to decide whether you want to make a move. I have him in a couple of leagues, and obviously, I'm sticking with him this early. I don't usually like to get rid of somebody that I drafted maybe in this case in the second round.
Oh, yeah, right.
2 weeks in. So.
Yeah, no, that's if you're doing that, you've made a bad draft decision. I completely agree with that. We mentioned Ronnie Hillman. He is the guy that people, kind of traditionally are handcuffing with C.J. Anderson. Who are some of your other injury replacements, though, for him?
Well, I think you just have to look around. You're not going to get a C.J. Anderson clone in terms of a workhorse. But, if you're combing the waiver wires and you're looking in a PPR league, I think you really don't have a choice, but maybe to look at somebody like a Lance Dunbar in Dallas. I think with the Dez injury, his role, is likely to be expanded. I'd also would think that, if you're looking at a buy, sort of, if you're a Sankey owner, for example, like we saw him last week have a big game, you might have to get a trade together. Chris Johnson, for example, is going to be taking over. We're kind of cutting through because all these injuries, whether you own a player who's injured or some other player, sometimes the other person's handcuff or another guy on the roster is the better pickup for you. So, to think that we're talking about picking up Chris Johnson this year, but it's a viable pickup if you need help in the near term. He plays on a good team, which is better than ideal.
I think
Bruce
Arians
has said pretty clearly that he's not going to roll with David Johnson immediately. Like, he's not going to subject his rookie to that kind of pressure.
That's his MO.
And assuming that if Ellington comes back in the next couple of weeks, you might get a few weeks of play out of Chris Johnson. So I think if you need a short-term bridge gapper for CJ, I'd maybe look at Chris Johnson. If you have time to wait and you're looking for kind of a person that might really start stepping it up in the second half of the season, I personally would rather have David Johnson. But again, it varies if you have an immediate need versus somebody that you're kind of building a stronger roster for the second half. And I also just say to everybody, check your waiver wire for discarded players, because I logged on to one of my leagues the other morning and I really thought I was dreaming. Someone had dropped Tyler Eifert.
No way.
Who I wanted to get in this league, and I didn't get him in this particular league, and I immediately pounced on that. I mean, come on, dropping Tyler Eifert even after a big game like that, it made absolutely no sense to me.
No sense. Yeah,
but
I
people
always
do
check the waiver wire
things like
too.
that. And Duke Johnson, he had a rather quiet beginning, so he's another guy that I really like over the long term. But Sankey, coming off a good game last week, he should have another. It depends if Tennessee can. I'm sort of not prepared, and I know you know a lot more about the Tennessee Titans than I do. I'm not prepared to anoint the Titans like a great road team yet. After destroying the Bucs last week.
Yeah.
But Sankey might be a guy that you could negotiate a trade for, at least with Cobb out. It looks like they will be using Terrence West, though, as maybe kind of the hammer. So there's a lot of shared situations. So like I said, sometimes you have to find, I use the term a Mr. Right Now with these players. You need somebody that can bridge a gap for you while, let's say, your earlier draft picks gain momentum.
Yeah, speaking of Andre Ellington, I own him in a lot of leagues. He was treated, this is kind of Bruce Arians' MO. He eased Andre Ellington in, and he's going to ease David Johnson in. This is how I see the CJ, the Chris Johnson, Ronnie Hillman thing. I think at this stage in their careers, Ronnie Hillman is a better back than Chris Johnson. But unfortunately, I think that Chris Johnson is on the better team. And so you might see, you might see better stats. It's a real dilemma, though, because you don't know. What we've seen from Chris Johnson he's been very up and down. His tenure with the Jets wasn't that great.
He looked a little motivated. He's looked a little more motivated. Like I said, I'm not ready. We can't forget the last couple of years. But I think he still has maybe, I read something where he said about getting shot, he really thought his career would be over, that he'd never get another chance. So maybe that was some sort of, aha moment for him. Like I said, I don't know. I'm not expecting the world, but I do think because, and let's face it, the Cardinals' offense really depends on Carson Palmer staying healthy.
Oh, yes.
Which is all what happened last year after he went out. It was a disaster on many levels.
It was.
So
it definitely
as long
was.
as he's healthy, we'll be in a lot better shape for any of your fantasy assets on that team.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. Big news, it looks like Arian Foster is set to return earlier than anybody initially anticipated. Probably won't play this week, might play next week. What is your take on Arian Foster, and what should owners do with him?
Well, I'm laying out the welcome mat in any league where I own him.
Yeah, right.
And in previous you, I have him and Le'Veon Bell. So week 3 could be a big cause for celebration. I think the thing about Foster, and we've seen this over the years, when you I didn't actually draft him earlier in the season, but once the injury happened and then his draft stock fell, if he was sitting there, in the 6th round, 7th round, 10th round, I got him in a lot of 10th rounds, and then one in one of those 36-round drafts that I happened to look and see he was still there in like round 27.
Wow.
So, because, as people are using the rankings on the site, they kind of push people down once they aren't being drafted so often. So it was just one of those things where I thought, let me just see for the heck of it, and he was there. So anyway, I'm excited to use him. I do feel that one thing about Foster is that, he knows his body, he knows when he's ready. If he isn't ready, he's not going to play. And so, if you have the luxury of maybe having a couple people ahead of him that you drafted again, if you got him later, so he's more like your RB3 or 4, something like that, then perhaps you can afford to sit him and take a wait-and-see mode. But I'm personally wanting, if he plays, I want to use him. Because when he's on the field, he produces.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely. You mentioned this, and I had a similar experience. I was kind of surprised with how low Philip Rivers was going. And very early on, I have 12 fantasy football leagues, and very early on, I was learning to scroll down because some really nice players had fallen. And I would look and see who was out there, and I would be like, what? And so I would scroll down, and there'd be what was, in my opinion, a better option, and I would pounce on it. So it's interesting to hear that other people ran into that thing too. Let's talk a little bit about Des Bryant. We definitely want to get Vashti in here in a minute to talk some Panthers, but I want to get your opinion on Des Bryant. I own Des Bryant. It's a real dilemma because he might be out 8 weeks. Most leagues don't have short-term IR, so you're going to carry him, aren't you?
Well, I say carry him as opposed to dumping him, but you have to really look. I don't think there's one right answer because I think it depends on the strength of your roster. Let's say you went early on running backs, because everybody in different leagues, and I find this in PPR leagues in particular, you can kind of get by a little bit if you have stronger running backs and wide receivers, but if he's a core player, a lot of people took him in the first round, so the idea of cutting him, just dropping him, in maybe a 10-team league, you could probably do that and still get someone, like if you could pick up a James Jones or somebody like that that's going to at least probably get you some touchdowns. But, I'd try to negotiate a deal. But I'll tell you what, I'd rather be on the selling end of Des Bryant in season long than I would be on the receiving end because I'm not particularly confident about the 8 weeks. If the Cowboys are in the thick of it, and I really do feel that even though they're the only team in that division that has a win, they'll probably be at least in the mix for, the NFC East title. They're not going to bring Des Bryant back prematurely if they need
I don't
him
think so either.
to push at the end and then for potentially for playoffs. So it's a real quagmire. In season-long leagues, I'd be willing to maybe try to trade him for somebody that you can score points, because a lot of times we haven't hit bye weeks, and you know that there'll be more injuries coming along. Mostly every team has to deal with injuries. Every fantasy owner has to deal with injuries. So depending on how deep your bench is, you may be able to stash him a little bit longer, but you also may be able to get something for him. So I think it just really depends on who you have on your bench and what your waiver wire looks like for you to decide whether you hold him for a bit and see what happens, or you try to move him now while there's still some optimism that it's more of the 6 to 8 week return than something potentially longer.
I own him in a league that was did not practice nightmare. I have Des Bryant, Julio Jones. Is that guy ever going to just be healthy? I don't think so. Delaney Walker didn't practice. Andre Ellington didn't practice, and Jonathan Stewart. So it's kind of a bit of a dilemma for me. I already own some Cole Beasley. Do you think that Cole Beasley or Terrence Williams will be able to pick up that slack?
Well, I think the opportunities will be there. I do like Beasley in PPR leagues. He's not like an amazing super talent, but he is a shifty little slot receiver. He had 6 targets last week and 4 catches for 49 yards, but I do imagine his role is going to grow. And I can sort of foresee a little bit of dink and dunk in the Cowboys' future, moving down the field with Beasley and Jason Witten. And then I think originally I had maybe Beasley for 50 to 60 catches with Dez in the lineup. So that number could go up a bit in PPR leagues. And if you're in a deeper league, like a 14-teamer or more, he'll be particularly valuable. And Terrence Williams is an interesting guy. I mean, he certainly has talent. He's a bit of a boomer bust type player, though. And his production in the past has often been dependent on touchdowns. And if he doesn't touchdown, he's likely to get a touchdown. You can be looking at a lot of, 3 for 45-yard type of days, or 50 yards and everything like that. So I would say that I'd make sure if either of those guys was on a waiver wire, I'd be looking to snap them up. I can't imagine. Williams seems to be drafted. Beasley was probably available in a lot of at least 12-teamers, certainly 10-teamers. But Williams may be less likely on the waiver wire, so you might want to maybe negotiate a trade for him. And, the other thing that's a little complicated is that their run game is still to be determined. I thought that Randall looked better last week than I expected, but I don't think that it's, he's a lock to be the lead guy. I do think, as I said earlier, that they will use Dunbar. McFadden's already been pushed down 3rd on the depth chart, although, again, depth charts are very organic. And then we haven't seen Kristen Michael yet. So he's still an X factor to me. I've picked him up. I'm not expecting the world, but if I had somebody at the end of my bench that I was really lukewarm on, or I just was somebody expendable and I needed maybe a little bit of juice in my running back stable, I picked up some shares of Kristen Michael just to see. He's kind of like a Bryce Brown type to me, tons of talent. It's really a mental type of thing, mastering the fundamentals and being willing to, kind of master the game that is not just what you physically do as a running back. So, but, he's in New Digs with an opportunity, and he won't be asked to do the same things that he was in Seattle, because their O-line is a lot worse than the Dallas O-line. So I have some hope there.
Yeah, I picked him up too in a couple of leagues for similar reasons. I'm going to go ahead and let Vashti get in here and ask you some Panthers questions.
Hey, Allie, thanks for joining us. Of course, I'm in Carolina country. Big news. Panthers will have a task taking on J.J. Watt and the Texans this weekend. Cam Newton has had some issues with his accuracy, questions about whether he's going to turn the corner and really become one of the league's elite quarterbacks. Can he be trusted?
Well, I think one of the things that when Cam first burst onto the scene in terms of his NFL career, one of the things that gave him the extra juice, similar to RG3, was his running ability. His ability to get you, 700, 800 yards, plus maybe 5 or 6 running touchdowns in a year, and that was kind of taken away last year. I'm not sure that they can convert him to a pocket passer like a traditional player. I think we've seen some of that kind of fail when you attempt to make somebody into something that they're not. I do think watching the game last week, rewatching, I noticed that he actually made some really good throws. His receivers didn't always do him any favors. So, I think it's just a matter of finding, the balance between what he does as a runner and hopefully getting, let's face it, it's kind of a sad state of affairs right now. Aside from Greg Olsen, it's kind of a mishmash there of receivers. Funchess didn't look ready to step up. A lot of people already anointing him when Kelvin Benjamin went down, Kelvin 2.0, but although there was some rawness to Kelvin's game, he made contested catches. I think he was ahead considerably to where Funchess was at the same time last year. So Cotchery is sort of a 4 for 50-yard catch guy, but he is a guy that can catch a couple of touchdowns here and there. Ginn seems like the deep threat. I'm curious to see, they did a trade with Seattle a month or so ago, and last night we saw Jordan Norwood, as he's a journeyman slot receiver, making catches there and missing some in Denver. But there's a Kevin Norwood that I'm kind of excited to see once he masters the playbook, if he can maybe step up and, give Cam another reliable target aside from Cotchery, who, I'm not against aging wide receivers by any stretch, but, he doesn't have a lot to work with, and I don't know what the heck happened last week with Greg Olsen, unless the defense really just schemed to take him out of the mix last week.
Yeah, it's a sad state of affairs regarding the receivers here in Carolina, and we were all waiting on the front office to make some type of signing that would seem to give Cam Newton the weapons that he deserves. That Kelvin Benjamin loss was huge for us here in Carolina. And you brought up a good point about Cam being a threat on the running threat. I never understood, and for health reasons, okay, but I don't understand why you would draft a quarterback because of his athletic ability and being a double threat, his ability to move out of the pocket and gain yards on the ground, and then try to stifle that ability by restricting him when he gets on the field. Is that something? Maybe you could help me understand that.
Well, I think a few years back when it seemed to work, after the RG3, breakout season as a rookie, Russell Wilson can scramble, Cam Newton, a lot of people were sort of like, it's the running quarterback, that's the way, but this is a passing league. So when you draft a player that isn't necessarily his his forte. Now, bear in mind that, I mean, RG3 had a decent arm, a good arm. But, it's also that, sort of if your O-line isn't very good and you're not getting protection, then you're at risk. I believe Cam took more sacks last year than any quarterback in the league. So, that was an issue. And I think last year they wanted to kind of protect him. So that's where we saw maybe his stock, his fantasy draft stock drop this year, because you can't count on those, those rushing yards and the rushing touchdowns. So I think it's just a decision that a team has to make about what kind of, quarterback they're drafting, and does it fit the scheme and what they want to do. Now, it's interesting because Mariota has mobility, but he's also but he looks like he's been very well coached so far,
he
and he has that football intelligence that some things you can't teach. It's just sort of there, and it's just part of who the person is, and so I think that he looks markedly better than maybe a lot of us expected, making the transition from the type of offense he ran in college to a pro style offense. But I noticed that in his case, Woods and Hunt and Company has kind of developed plays that draw on his strengths, which is helpful when you're starting a rookie and as part of the transition. So for Carolina, they really need to get that receiving core clicking, because Cam can't do it all by himself. And even when he's making throws, people have to catch the ball.
Yeah. Do you think, speaking of talking about receivers, Funchess, is he going to need the whole season to get it going, or do you see him getting within some type of consistent stride this year? What are your expectations from him, from a playing standpoint and also a fantasy standpoint?
Well, for me, once I started reading and listening to, the people on the ground there in Carolina, I kind of always felt like if you drafted him as a wide receiver 4 or 5, you were that was the right zone for him. You used to be able to draft Devin Funchess in the 11th, 12th, 13th round. Then once the Cam injury started, not the Cam injury, the Kelvin injury occurred, he was going in the 9th round. And by the time we were getting closer to the start of the season, people were drafting Funchess as their second or third wide receiver in some cases, which is enormous pressure for your roster. So I still think that, we're early on. Repetition and on-field experience can start to click, but he might not be a guy who gets you more than maybe 500 or 600 yards this season, maybe 7 if he really makes a shift in the second half. But I don't think you can use him until we actually see him do something. It's a very risky proposition. I mean, when I get a lot of sit-start questions and I see, Devin Funchess in the mix, and there are other players who are more guaranteed to get you points that week, it's just that it doesn't make any sense.
Now, Jonathan Stewart, he sat out of practice on Wednesday. Yesterday, Coach Rivera said it was a vet day. Yesterday, he was full contact practice. He's now, with Jangelo Williams gone, he's now Carolina's featured back. How do you think he'll do in that role? Where would you place him on your fantasy team?
Well, I drafted, I haven't drafted Jonathan Stewart in 4 years, but I did pick him up in some leagues this year. And I think that he's comfortably a running back 2 most weeks. And depending on the opponent and his health, he could get you some RB1 upside, like I said, depending on the matchup. If in a PPR league you want to see him more involved in the passing game, but like this week, for example, I have him as a running back too, so I have him at 17 against Houston, like 70 yards, and then another, 18 to 20 catching 3 passes. And, he has a chance to score. So, he's a mid-range RB2, and I don't have an issue using him as long as he's healthy. Some of these guys, you use them, if you draft them, use them while they're still, healthy. And for a person that's had as many injuries as he had over the years, he does know what he's doing. I think the rest days are kind of normal for some of these guys, these vets in the league. I don't read too much into it. The LaShawn McCoy injury, taking him out of practice because his hamstring felt tight is a little bit scary if you were a McCoy owner. But for the Jonathan Stewart, it seems a little par for the course. So use him this week as an RB2.
Hey, Allie, I have Jonathan Stewart. And can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I have Jonathan Stewart, and I was wondering what you thought about, because I don't know. He's on the injury report. Okay, sure, Coach Rivera, but it's so hard to trust him because of the injury history. Do you think that Cameron Artemis-Payne, I think that's his name, Cap, they call him Cap, do you think that he is the handcuff guy now? Is he the guy that you're going to want to pick up if, for whatever reason Jonathan Stewart can't go?
Yeah, he doesn't seem, he only played 4 snaps last week, so I'm not sure that he's ready for prime time, but he'd sure be stepping into a larger role. So, if you were looking to handcuff Stewart, he would be the guy that I would stash on my bench. I wouldn't, bother with like a Tolbert or anybody like that. He would be the player that I would rather kind of have there to cover my fantasy butt if I was a Stewart owner.
Also, just one more thing. I had Jordy Nelson in a very, very, very deep league where you couldn't make any waiver claims until after the week 1 games. And so I submitted some waiver claims. I won Nate Washington, which I thought was a great pickup for me. Then I went out and I got Jericho Cotchery because the old man's still getting it done. And I wouldn't do Ted Ginn. I don't think Ted Ginn's a good option, but how do you feel about my pickup of Jericho Cotchery?
Yeah, I can't do a Ted Ginn thing. I know that if it's a very deep league, you basically are looking for anyone with a pulse. But I do think that, Cotchery has decent hands. He's definitely more reliable. And as I said, the plan sometimes is you have to go for a Mr. Right Now. Somebody that can help you get through a couple of weeks, and then some other option could come your way on the waiver wire. Somebody could get disgusted with, let's say, a receiver. For example, I noticed a lot of drops on Nelson Aguilar after 1 game, which I think is crazy. But I would pounce on a Nelson Aguilar if I saw somebody drop him. Allen Robinson was another guy last week that had a very bad first game. And if you look across many of the fantasy sites, people are dropping these guys. So I like Cotchery as sort of a stopgap pickup for you. Like I said, I think it really depends. His long-term fantasy value this year will depend on what the other guys in the Carolina receiving corps do. Does somebody step up? Does somebody else emerge? And then I don't think, he'll be as valuable. But right now, he's worth rostering in a deep league because he's actually in the mix for catches. And he can be a red zone target for Cam. And so that's what you're looking for.
All right, one more question, then we'll let you get out of here. Who are your waiver wire studs and duds right now?
Well, if you're looking, if I drafted like a quarterback, I do think we saw some recovery last night from Peyton, but I'd be wanting to have an upside backup on my roster maybe. I do like Marcus Mariota this year. I do not think that you can count on, they're not going to play the Buccaneers every week. But as I said, I think he showed enough that he's sort of an intriguing fantasy commodity for the rest of the season. And, he has that upside. I also think, a Tyrod Taylor could be interesting for fantasy owners. If you have a solid guy, or let's say this week, if you have a guy that you're a little nervous about, like a Matt Stafford, you might want to kind of, look on the waiver wire to see if there's someone that you can kind of step up and get him. I do like in the running back category, we didn't talk about him earlier, but it's always risky going with a Patriots running back, but I do like Deion Lewis this week and as a potential flex option going forward for PPR formats. And then some guys, it's really about not liking waiver wire guys. It's just recognizing that they're kind of stash and hope types, or maybe they're not going to get you much. Like, for example, if you lost a running back this week and D'Angelo Williams is sitting on the waiver wire and you need someone for week 2, and I'm not talking about as a Le'Veon Bell owner, but, I don't think his matchup this week will be quite what we saw last week against the Patriots, but he showed that he still has plenty of juice left in his legs. So, again, it's kind of like, grab him now and then recognize that his value going forward may not be, what you're looking for.
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't mean to interrupt you, but big news just came across. Yeah. Big news just came across the Twitter wire, the Twitter fantasy football wire. Johnny Manziel is going to get the start versus the Titans. So Marcus Mariota is probably a good play this week.
Yeah, I do like Mariota this week. Like I said, there are some quarterbacks that, it's not a bad idea to roll with the Mariota if you need some upside in your lineup. I mean, that's what you're looking for. Sometimes you want to go with the sort of safe, he's going to get me 15, 20 points. Other times you want someone who can give you that extra juice. I don't think the Cleveland defense is as bad as they played last week. So that's my only kind of thing.
I agree with that.
So I think people need to, manage expectations, but it is certainly a favorable matchup. And then I think the week after they play the Colts, and we've seen that the Colts don't have a banging defense either. So, I mean, you get some early season play out of Mariota if you need him. And I'm actually rolling with the Titans defense in 2 leagues.
Oh, that's cool. Well, they look, they look good. I mean, Cody Sensabaugh had a pick 6, and, it was a promising start for the Titans in every sense of the word. So you'll like this, Allie. In one of my best ball leagues, I won Marcus Mariota for, I don't know, like $2 or something ridiculously cheap. So I had Aaron Rodgers and Marcus Mariota in a best ball league. And I was looking pretty good.
Yeah, you hope to get that. I took him in a number of best ball leagues myself, just kind of thinking, well, I have someone that I'm really comfortable with, so I don't have to take a second quarterback too early. Which I'm loath to do. In many of my seasonal leagues, if I have a guy that I really like, I don't even bother with a backup, because early in the season I like to have more opportunities to stash running backs and wide receivers. But in best ball you have to draft differently. So yeah, I mean, and then you don't ever have to make the sit-start decision, which is awesome. It just calculates it for you, on its own.
It's so
awesome.
Great. How do you feel about Johnny Manziel? Is he a good play this week or not?
He'll be an interesting play. I personally wouldn't start him in a seasonal league. I think he'll be cheap on like a daily fantasy site. So if you want to go cheap on the quarterback and and then build the rest of your roster with, more money to spend, he might be an option. I just want to see more. It didn't look great last week. But, he was coming in, off the bench, and he didn't have a lot of reps, so I don't want to sort of judge him on 1 week. And based on what we saw from Tennessee, and I would say that Jameis Winston was maybe, we had higher expectations last week. I just wouldn't trust him in my regular season-long league.
Yeah, I agree with that. Allie, we've kept you way, way longer than we should have, but you're always so great, and your fantasy football knowledge is really unprecedented. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show. Tell everybody again where they can find you out there.
Okay, yes, you can find me on Twitter at Allie Fontana. I'm happy to answer any of your sit, start, trade, waiver wire type questions. I don't sleep much during football season, so tweet at me and I'll respond.
I'm telling you, I could not get by. I would not do nearly as well without Allie's help, and so I'm so thankful to have her as a resource, and you should use her as well. She's absolutely fantastic. Have fun out in sunny LA. I know it's probably beautiful out there, and I hope that you have a wonderful weekend, Allie.
Thank you. So thanks so much for having me on, and good luck in week 2.
Thanks. You too.
All right. Have a good weekend.
All right. You too. All right, that was Allie Fontana with your fantasy football fix, one of our favorite fantasy football analysts out there. Vashti, are you still with me?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. I'm sorry. We got a little carried away with fantasy football. We've got a few more minutes left, though. Let's talk about the WNBA. And we had some Twitter responses to the WNBA and to our high school coaches question as well. Do you want to finish up real quick with those two?
Sure. We'll go ahead. We had 2 more game on or game over topics that we didn't get to, so we have a little bit of time. We're going to do them now. The WNBA is not nearly where people thought it would be when it started, back in the early 90s? I think it was probably like the early 90s.
Yeah, I believe that's right.
In regards to popularity, last season was the worst attendance that it's ever had. Commissioner Adam Silver, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, and WNBA is kind of under the NBA. Recently said that the NBA could do a better job of marketing its women's league. Game on or game over, that WNBA popularity will ever increase.
I say game on to the possibility. I completely agree with Adam Silver. It has not been marketed to its full potential. It's never going to be as popular as the NBA. I mean, I think that I think that in some ways it's a much better product because it is team basketball. It's basketball in its more basketball in its purest form than what the NBA is. But it's never going to reach that popularity. It can definitely get more popular, and I would like to see them do a better job of it.
You know, if your league can't flourish when you have stars like Brittany Griner come in, I thought that she would be a huge draw for the league just based on her big name in college, her kind of being able to do things outside of the box as far as her defense and being able to dunk. And if Brittany Griner can't help your league, I just really don't know what can. Unfortunately, women's basketball across the board, unless you are in a place where, you have some good teams, of course, women's basketball will always be more popular in Connecticut and Tennessee, because they have a legacy of a winning women's basketball culture, and they have communities who have been supporting their winning teams for so long. Now in South Carolina, I think the women's games get more attended than the men's games, but those are like 3 examples out of how many thousands of schools. And
they're kind of isolated pockets.
Yeah, when women get drafted into the WNBA, it's like, okay, unless it's like a Brittany Griner or a what's the girl that played at Notre Dame? Her name is escaping me right now. Unless it's one of the main people, you don't know who these players are, and part of popularity, I think, is name recognition, and now the
absolutely.
WNBA doesn't have it. Nobody knows who these women are, and I can't see the WNBA really flourishing at all, really. I mean, you can market stuff till the wheels fall off, but I just don't see it. I just don't see it flourishing, unfortunately.
I think that it can. I think some of the problem is that you never know where you can find it. You never know where you can watch it. You have to you literally have to go out and look for it. If you want to watch a WNBA game, it's not easy to figure out how to do it. It starts there. Tell your fan base how they can catch these games. Put them in market it in a manner that makes it more easily accessible to the general public, and they might actually freaking watch.
Excalibur said that Skylar Diggins, that's the name of the female, that's who I was thinking about. He tweeted that the WNBA needs a star to be attractive. So Brittany Griner, and I can see where he's coming from. I mean, women like attractive women and men like attractive women. That's why Beyonce is more popular, or even Beyonce is talented. Let's say Ashanti. She doesn't really have much talent. She never did. That's how Ashanti can have more popularity. Or Sierra, Or Sierra can have more popularity than, let's say, a Jill Scott or a Layla Hathaway. Women who have the actual vocal ability, but they might not be considered as quote unquote sexy or Lettucey. Lettucey is another example of somebody with an outstanding voice, but they aren't considered commercially appealing to the mass audience. So, I think that that's true. I think that's true. It might not be fair, but it's true.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got a lot of interest in this final topic. Let's talk a little bit about these high school players.
2 Texas high school football players were suspended for tackling an official. They were on Good Morning America this morning, I think, or it was either yesterday or today. And they said that the coach told them to do it. The players' names, Michael Moreno and Victor Rojas, expressed regret for their tackle and said that it left their futures in limbo. Here's what Rojas said: "I can't explain it. I was doing what I was told." Rojas said a player came over and told him that the coach gave the instructions. Moreno said he was in shock and couldn't fully go through it. He said, "I pulled up a lot. It was hard for me during the whole thing to actually do what I did, and to this day I regret it. It's one of my biggest regrets, and it's been affecting my life greatly." Moreno confirmed that their coach told them to do it. While on the sideline, he pulled me and another player over, and I quote, "You need to hit him," he said. "You need to hit the ref. He needs to pay the price." Just for everything that was going on in the game, there were racial slurs being thrown at players from this referee. There were unjustified calls. I guess his emotions got mixed into it, and he told us to do what we did. Also, there was an accusation that Rojas and Moreno, who are Hispanic, were told to speak English. This is America. Game on and game over that the coach should shoulder most of the blame for these football players' actions.
I say game on that that the coach should accept responsibility for this. Now, I do think that these young players should be disciplined. I don't think that they should be held blameless. But, we talked a little bit about Deflategate earlier, and caught up in Deflategate was Bountygate. And what happened in Bountygate was that, the punishment was reduced and in some cases vacated because Paul Tagliabue thought that, and I agree with him, by the way, that the players were doing what they were doing as instructed by coaches and the New Orleans Saints organization. And there's a lot of, listen, you're, as a player, I know Vashti knows this, you're going to do what the coaches tell you to do. And so I do think that the coach should shoulder most of the blame for this.
When this first came out, I immediately said that no player is going to do that without getting the green light from a coach. And I think I tweeted that. But I knew that that's such a bold move and it's such a punishable move that no player is going to be rogue and say, okay, we're just going to hit this ref blindside and we're going to blindside this ref. Now, on the flip side, I think that, I don't know, I think that these players, in order to save themselves, are completely throwing the coach under the bus. Now, this is what I think probably happened, because the coach isn't on the field. The coach can't hear what this ref is saying to the players. So players might have come up to the coach and said, this is what happened. We want to get the ref back. And then the coach agreed to it. I don't know if all of this, the coach, one guy said that another player told them to get the coach. Then this one guy said that the coach actually told him. It just seems like I don't know where the truth is, and we probably won't know where the truth is. I believe the ref probably said something offensive. Also, the ref is denying that. But no, and maybe I'm just naive, but I don't think that even a coach or a player is going to retaliate just for nothing. So I think that everybody is at fault, and I think that the coach should shoulder responsibility. I don't think these players, I think these players are kind of throwing the coach under the bus in an attempt to get off scot-free, and I don't think that that's fair because as a young man in high school, whatever level you are, you have the ability to say no. And even though you do most of the time do what the coaches tell you to do in a game format, you still know what's right and what's wrong. And I just don't know if this coach came up with this idea that, okay, y'all need to go ahead and bust this ref up. I think that the players came up with it because it seems like something that a teenager would think of. And then the coach wrongfully gave them the green light to do so. But, it's a real sticky situation.
Yeah. No, I agree with everything that you just said. And you do want and I'll say this too. Listen, if the allegations about what this particular official was saying and doing, if that is true, he didn't deserve, by the way, the punishment for that is not to be blindsided out on the football field. It's to be reported and investigated and punished officially. And if that is, in fact, the case, he needs to be punished accordingly.
What were some of the tweets? Real quick.
All right, real quick. Let's see here. Tuka, Deborah on Twitter said, of course they have to be suspended, but coach should receive greater punishment. Vostickle, how on earth can this be? Oh, she was talking about, I believe, the Pac-Man Jones and Dominic Sue thing. She said, how on earth can this behavior not warrant a suspension? Something else, especially with the emphasis on coaching. Shelley Manning said that's not good enough. How about you tell the head coach or the assistant coach telling you to do that, man up? They do need to man up and take responsibility. I completely agree with that. Mike, again, weighing in, said that coach is part of the problem. It's clear the culture around that football program is the biggest issue. That coach shouldn't even feel comfortable making that call. Football is clearly everything to that community. And, yeah, I mean, we're talking about Texas. From the high school football, and that is true. It is the biggest thing going in Texas.
Well, guys, that's it. We got to wrap it up. Time, it goes by so fast, and I always think, we're going to have plenty of time to talk about everything we want to talk about. We always seem to be cutting it close at the end. Thank you for tuning in. You can check me out on Twitter at Vashti Hurt. Make sure you check out my website, CarolinaBlitz.com. Sharona, take us out.
All right, you can follow me on Twitter at Sports by Sharona. Follow the show's Twitter at Game Over Sports. Have a great weekend. Happy Friday, and we'll be talking to you soon.